So hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to So we are back with a brand new movie on what if Naruto was raised spandex gods and still aliens alive. But before we start, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video. Now let's begin the story. So, definitely not in the elemental nations anymore, muttered a teen blankly as his eyes shifted from his left to his right as he took in the sights that greeted his vision. Said sights happened to be large tower-like buildings reaching the sky like the Hokage monument had back in his village, while also having multiple metal-like machines either in the sky, which he saw less of, and on the ground where he could see hundreds of different-looking metal objects moving at genin speeds. What the hell are those? Thought Naruto with a blank stare as he watched the metallic objects moving around a seemingly pitch-black ground that had markers indicating where to go. Deciding to go and see what they were, the teen glanced down slightly from his position on one of the large buildings before shrugging his shoulders and falling down towards the street below. And as he fell, Naruto could hear the sounds of people gasping and screaming out in fear as he fell head first towards the ground with his arm covering his eyes in order to stop the wind from slapping him in the face. Why the hell do the people down there seem so freaked out about this? Isn't ninjas like me still common enough for this to not be all that worrisome? Asked Naruto rhetorically as he let out a small smirk as he made a small flip in the air before coming into contact with the stone-like floor below, his body landing in a comfortable crouch for a few seconds before he pushed himself up onto his feet. Stretching his back slightly and popping his shoulders into place, the black-haired, crimson-eyed teen let out a small sigh of relief before looking around at the awestruck people around him. Tilting his head, Naruto simply let out a small shrug before moving his eyes over towards a yellow metal object before walking over to it and standing next to what appeared to be the front where a lone man sat inside. Raising his hand up slightly before tapping on the window, Naruto watched as the glass between himself and the older man, lowered itself down, allowing the two to come face to face. "Whatcha want?" asked the man, his voice seemingly slurred with the stench of alcohol invading Naruto's nose almost immediately as he spoke. Using a minor bit of wind release to form a thin barrier between the two, Naruto shook his head for a moment, before blinking as his mind suddenly realized something. What the hell did that guy say? I couldn't understand him, thought the teen with a rather blank stare, which seemingly pissed off the guy as he suddenly drove off, leaving Naruto behind blinking at the odd interaction. Well, that was a waste, muttered Naruto in an irritated tone, turning around and crossing his arms as he let out a small pout before looking up towards the people around him, who were still staring at him and speaking in a weird language. Twitching slightly because he couldn't understand anything they were saying, the teen let out a large audible sigh before locking eyes with a seemingly random brunette woman holding a child. Not long did he do that he suddenly blinked his eyes once again as he grasped his head in faint irritation before looking around once again. Is he a mutant? How the hell did he do that? Mommy, can I do that too? Freak. He looks kinda cute with his eyes, you think they're natural? As if Rebecca. Probably contacts. Is he against the registration? Is he a criminal? I've never seen this guy before, and he's not even wearing a mask either. Really, Naruto should have stopped listening not even 10 seconds after gaining a shit ton of new knowledge courteously of said random woman whom he had eye contact with. He not only gained a decent understanding of the world, but also the language it holds. Well, specifically he learned one new language, which happened to be the most commonly spoken in New York, as the current place he was in was called. However, while Naruto was still blankly staring at the random people while having a moment to himself, he suddenly snapped his eyes wide open as he heard the scream of "Help!" pierce his ears. Turning his head, Naruto watched as someone began running across the road with a small bag slung over his shoulder with a smirk shown on his face, which had been concealed by a headgear of some sorts before rushing past him and the confused crowd around him. Blinking at the rather slow culprit, the teen simply flicked his left wrist, sending a single wire out from his wire launchers where he then watched the sleek thin wire of his wrap itself around the running man's throat before locking itself in place. Letting out a small grin, the teen sent a small bolt of electricity through his wire, causing the recipient to spasm as he let out a pained scream to the heavens for a few moments before passing out dead on the floor. Turning his body around and walking up to the now shocked body, Naruto crouched himself down before pulling the bag off the man's body before standing up and looking around. Hey, whose bag is this? Asked the teen as he waved the bag around for a few seconds, showing the lightly teal-colored bag off. It's mine. Thank you so much, screamed a voice as it barged straight through the group of people talking about him. Watching as a teenage girl appeared, Naruto let out a small smile as his eyes connected with hers for a brief moment before handing the bag back. Here you go. Just be careful with leaving your belongings at a cafe shop, okay? Chuckled out Naruto, getting a small blush from the girl as she nodded before running away, leaving the teen there with the crowd once again. So, what do I have to do to the guy there now? I couldn't get much since my time being here, replied Naruto lamely as he pointed over towards the downed thief, who was slightly twitching, showing that he was well alive and fine, just possibly paralyzed for the next couple of hours. No one seemed to answer the teen as they just continued to stare at him, leaving him slightly embarrassed as he scratched the back of his head a bit before hearing a small squeaky voice. Oh, you have to call the police, Mr. Spider-Man, yelled a small blonde-haired boy, no larger than the age of 5, as he pointed to the small metallic device in his hand before showing Naruto, who was now staring at the screen, a scene of what appeared to be a man in red and blue spandex shooting webbing at a crook, thus restraining them before someone called the police to pick them up. Blinking at the rather odd get-up, the teen shrugged his shoulders slightly before rubbing the kid's head while turning towards the crook on the floor. Crouching as soon as he reached the crook's head, the teen gave the still knocked-out man a small grin before placing his hand on the man's head before sending a small burst of chakra, causing a thin purple veil of energy to overcome the man's body. Turning towards the crowd once again, the teen let out a small smile. You don't have to worry, the man is just held within a barrier that will disable itself after 3 hours, more than enough time for your police to come and retrieve him, replied Naruto in a confident tone, arousing some nods from the group before he gave the small child a peace sign. And my name is Naruto Hayabusa, titled as either ninja or devil, depending on what's going on. I have also earned the nickname of Savior and Hero, alongside the other 2 titles, replied Naruto, getting an odd look from the kid for a few moments before looking at him confused. But isn't the devil evil? So wouldn't that make you evil, mister? Asked the small child, getting a small chuckle from Naruto as from the corner of his eyes he watched people flinch and move back a bit. Shaking his head, Naruto pointed over towards his eyes. Not really. Well, as a child soldier I guess I have done some morally bad choices in regards of solving problems, but back in my universe it's kinda normal to do what I do, which isn't really something I should be telling a child. But anyway, I earned the nickname Devil from ending certain people who held things that they shouldn't have. You see, I have a special ability to see through someone's mind once I make eye contact. Most of the time I search for specific things like what drove them into doing certain things. Should the reason be something like protecting a loved one, I usually place them in an illusion so they can live their life with their loved one safely, while those who are really bad, I would end them before saving those who were in danger. Spoke Naruto in a slightly serious tone before waving his hand a bit. Anyway, that's how I earned my nickname Devil, and as you can guess, the nickname Savior or Hero was earned from those I saved, but from what I see, ending someone in this dimension a reality of whatever it is find killing morally wrong. Something I can help but disagree on personally, but since I'm here, I'll follow the rules I guess, replied Naruto loudly towards the crowd, who blinked at him in both shock and fear, before someone opened their mouth. But how do you know of our laws, huh? You said you were from some other place, shouted the man as he pointed towards Naruto in accusation, only to be supported by those around the teen as he scratched his head a bit before pointing towards the brunette woman who was also curious of what was going on. Oh, that's simple. When I locked eyes with the woman over there I tried to find how to speak and read in the language you people are using to communicate, but while doing that I also saw bits and pieces of what she thought was moral and immoral, which then delved into actual laws since she's a lawyer. Thus, my understanding of your country's regulations, replied Naruto, getting another gasp from the little boy in front of him as he pointed towards Naruto. So wait. You can learn things from others by looking at them. That is so cool. Teach me how to do that, Mr. Ninja. Screamed the child in childish joy, only for Naruto to chuckle a bit before letting a sorrowful look overtake his face. Sorry kiddo, but the kind of power I have isn't something I'm willing to share and teach as I don't want someone irresponsible to have it. Also on top of that, you people couldn't really use the power I have since you don't have chakra, the energy I naturally produce in my body to create my abilities. Spoke Naruto in a sorrowful tone, getting a small downtrodden look from the kid for a few moments, before smiling up towards Naruto once again. Okay. I understand, Mr. Ninja. So are you a new hero then? Because all the heroes are fighting each other and aren't looking after us like they used to, please say that you're going to help us. I already lost my dad because there was no one here to help him when our house was on fire, replied the kid with a small tear in his eye as he stared up at Naruto, who narrowed his eyes for a second before bringing the kid into a hug for a few moments before releasing a relaxing wave of energy around him, causing everyone there, whether they wanted to or not, to experience true peace for a few moments before relaxing themselves as Naruto released the child with a small smile. Sure, I guess I can. So first order of business I guess, beat up all these heroes and knock some sense into them, haha. Laughed Naruto slightly, getting small chuckles from the adults there as they watched Naruto send the blonde-haired kid back to his mother before turning around and pointing at the thief. Now Mr. Robber, be sure to go to bed by 9, and brush your teeth at 8, okay? Laters. chuckled Naruto slightly before suddenly snapping his head over towards a seemingly random direction before narrowing his gaze. I've got to go. Everyone here get to a safe place. Something's happening in that direction, replied Naruto as he gave those around him a quick serious stare for a moment before pulling his scarf up, covering the lower portion of his face before he disappeared in a gust of wind, leaving a cheering group of people behind him as they watched the new hero disappear in a gust of silent wind. With Naruto, the majority of them are grown adults, and yet the fight, for a stupid law that only puts those heroes against each other. This is going to end. Right here, right now. Muttered Naruto irritably as he watched the scene below where hundreds of masked individuals were laying the hurt on each other, with one just crushing a blonde-haired man's head, killing him. Narrowing his eyes at that, Naruto silently collected a mass amount of killing intent, before letting it explode out of his body, sending all the dark hatred-induced intent directly onto the forms of those below, sending most, if not all down onto the ground screaming as fear enveloped their forms as they felt pure and utter killing intent that they hadn't ever witnessed before. Watching as they squirmed around a bit on the floor as each held different reactions. The teen unfolded his arms before jumping down off the roof he had found himself on before landing gently on the road below with nothing other than a slight wisp of smoke around his feet before he suddenly walked towards a group of costumed heroes, who immediately backed away from him as the intensity of his killing intent became all the more potent, before suddenly disappearing, releasing all the heroes from their positions of fear. Before the majority suddenly found themselves knocked out via a set of Naruto clones that had appeared from nowhere. And as they dropped, one by one, the original Naruto could be seen standing in the middle of the true centerpiece of the fight, his hands holding both a brightly colored metal man's suit arm, and a blue and white striped man's wrist with a shield laying on the floor. Narrowing his eyes, Naruto glanced between the two. Captain America and Iron Man, correct? Questioned Naruto in a still tone, getting a nod from the two as they tried in vain to pry their arms free from the teen's grasp, only for Naruto to increase the pressure on their arms. Take a clear look at what's happening around you, and take a guess at what I'm doing this for, spoke Naruto in an irritated tone, causing the two to narrow their eyes at him. You don't understand, soldier. Don't mess with this situation when you have no clue what's... Before the good old captain could say anything more, he suddenly found his wrist snapped and his body smashed against the floor from when Naruto lifted him up from his wrist before pulling him down with enough force to restrain the man in the ground. Seeing this, the man in the iron suit let out a rather awkward chuckle as he looked towards Naruto's crimson-red eyes. Haha, could we possibly settle this over coffee? I have a great cappuccino maker at home and this is kind of, okay, not really kind of, but really shocking and pretty scary enough to make me use the urinal in my suit. Replied the man within the suit, causing Naruto blink for a moment, before clenching the man's arm even tighter while enhancing his strength with his chakra, allowing small dents to appear on the man's armor as he held the man. Take a serious look around you. Is this stupid law of yours really all that important to cause something like this? Tell me, shouted Naruto as he used his speed to quickly move his grasped hand from Iron Man's arm to his throat, where the sound of crinkling metal could be heard as the man in the suit was lifted up off the ground, before he used his repulses to send both him and Naruto into the air above. Blinking as he was basically blasted off the ground and into the air, Naruto took a full brunt blast of energy directly towards his chest, courteously of the Iron Man, before plummeting down towards the ground below, all while the man in the iron suit charged at him. Don't you see this law is to protect everyone? Screamed the man as he was just about to make impact with Naruto's form, only for the teen to turn intangible and slip through Iron Man's body, shocking the man for a brief moment before suddenly feeling a force push him in the back and directly towards the ground. And when he looked back, Naruto was there, seemingly flying with wind chakra pushing him and the Iron Man down even faster than before. Gritting his teeth within his suit, the man narrowed his eyes. Jarvis, back repulses now, screamed the man, causing a sudden blast of energy to smash Naruto's stomach once again, sending him away from the falling Iron Man before smashing into the ground. Where Naruto let out a small smirk as he felt a slight tinge of electricity move around his hands. The opening of the suit actually gave a small gap to shock the bastard. Damn, I might need to actually adapt in these situations, and with the whole no-kill thing going around, this is gonna be hard, thought Naruto as he watched the Iron Man suit push himself off the ground, before turning around and aiming his hand towards Naruto once again. You joined in a war you don't understand, punk, screamed the man, sending a large energy blast towards Naruto, who simply grinned as his falling form suddenly created a blue spiraling sphere in his right hand. And you have no clue what war is, screamed Naruto in return as he thrusted his right arm forwards, his Rasengan easily slicing through the blast as he fell closer and closer towards Iron Man, who seeing his attack was failing, decided to up the power. Jarvis, 100% power in my right hand repulse now. shouted the man, as he felt his suit's feet lock in place before a sudden increase of the golden-like blaster energy began to push Naruto back into the air with his Rasengan slightly faltering as it fought against the energy beam. Seeing this, the team grinned before adding wind nature towards the spiraling sphere, where it then once again began to slice up and through the blast, allowing contact between the two people moments later, with Iron Man's body smashed through the ground and Naruto's form standing on top of him. Glancing down towards his right arm, which was now devoid of his glove and a majority of his long sleeve, the team clenched his fist before letting out a small sigh. Really, this might actually be harder to do than I thought. Most of my enemies I either genjutsu or kill, but for some reason genjutsu doesn't affect these people as much as it did back in my dimension, and since I can't replicate the thing that sent me here, I can't back home either, muttered Naruto with a slight scowl on his face before suddenly feeling himself get flung from his position before smashing through a wall. Digging himself up and out of the hole in the wall, the team came face to face with what he remembered to be Spider-Man, as the small child from before pointed out. Watching as the Spandex's man sat crouched on a single piece of destroyed rock, the team let out a blank stare before letting out a small snicker, resulting in the man across from him to tilt his head. "What's so funny?" asked the man in a curious tone as he surveyed the wreckage of the area for a brief second before returning his attention back towards Naruto, who simply pushed himself out from the wall before shrugging his shoulders. "Nothing much, but you have a hole," replied Naruto with a slight wave of his hand, causing the spandex-wearing man to look down, only to internally bush in embarrassment where he saw multiple small holes and tears all around a certain area. Damn rocks and building parts catching his near skin-tight suit. However, as Spider-Man was busy being embarrassed, he managed to only widen his eyes for a fraction of a second before finding unconsciousness claim him as he fell onto the floor in a bodied heap. Spider sense didn't work, thought the man moments before passing out on the cold ground next to a possibly concussed Captain America who tried to get his bearings while laying in the indented earth below. "Who the heck is this guy?" muttered the captain as he laid on the ground, his mind and vision both fuzzy as the sounds of fighting outside began to die down before falling silent. "Don't you realize the destruction you people have caused? And for what? Your hero's right. This sort of stuff shouldn't affect you had none of you stood for it. You chose to be a hero, you continue to choose being a hero. No one can force you to use your powers. The government or law doesn't make being a superhero a requirement should you have powers. Honestly, despite them I would have just used my powers for fun while allowing crime to go on for a bit, of course making sure people were safe, but petty crimes and all, and what would happen should someone report me using my powers? Well, they can't say anything since I wasn't being a hero, just a regular person with unique abilities," spoke a voice besides the captain's head. Turning slightly, Captain America could only stare up towards the black-themed shinobi for a few moments before letting out a small cough. "But if we did that, we would just be jeopardizing the possible people who could become casualties in minor petty thefts and guess what? It wouldn't be your fault, it would be the government's. And then you know what they would do? Once they realized that people gave up being heroes and saving the day for them? They would complain, slander and outright abuse past heroes for not doing their job. A job that they have no say in, and you know what they would do after their complaining? They would beg and plead for the heroes to return, as the public would direct its hatred towards the government, who had basically made all the heroes retire due to what they think is right," finished Naruto, cutting off the patriotic man off as he stood above the American idol known as Captain America. And as he laid there, Steve Rogers, Captain America, couldn't help but let out a small chuckle. "The people do have a habit of blaming the government at the end of the day, don't they?" questioned the man in a slightly mirthful tone, getting a small nod from Naruto, who internally sweat dropped as he remembered exactly how much ire the woman who he had taken knowledge from hated the government. And considering she was a lawyer that was saying something. Letting out a small sigh, the team crouched down onto a single knee before placing a single hand on Captain America's chest, before sending a small surge of pure yang energy, healing the captain's body at an incredible rate, something the captain himself noticed as his vision became clear once again with the agitating headache and pain disappeared. Not long after the captain was back on his feet, his shield secured on his back with Naruto doing the same procedure to Tony Stark, who immediately woke up with a gasp and a slight pained wince before listening to Naruto's reasonings. Safe to say, at the end of it, the two seemed to agree with Naruto, before quickly rallying their own two sides not minutes after, where they met clones of the original Naruto healing them all back to peak physical strength. Safe to say, Tony and Steve needed to keep tabs on the newest player on the board, and the possible threat he himself was. Naruto let out a happy smile not moments after reading their mind and finding out their thoughts by accident. He was sure to have fun showing off his abilities later on for the world to see. Once everyone was back to date with what was going on, the sides agreed to the plan, with some showing their concerns but eventually falling silent once Naruto's promise of helping was known. It wasn't exactly long before the world also found out what the teens' plan was either. 2 weeks later, with the heroes refusing to stop criminals from running amok, crime rates all over the world have increased over 1000%, with the heroes of the earth only saving victims should they be in danger, and even then, they let the villain go, reporting that they are simply helping their fellow man, not getting in the way of the government's job. A quote taken from Peter Parker, known as Spider-Man, who was last seen yesterday at the beach with a multitude of other heroes who had decided to take the day off, leaving 3 banks to be robbed by the same supervillain, the Grizzly. And not only that, but it seems the villains themselves have noticed that, should they not inflict harm or indirect damage to another person, the heroes wouldn't involve themselves with any conflict. As such, the sighting of heroes has fallen down while the civilian counterparts of each hero has been seen more and more. I am afraid that we might be seeing the end of heroes, ladies and gentlemen, and this was all created from the simple registration the government had placed, the SRA. Turn it off already, it seems we're in a position that we aren't all that comfortable with, gentlemen. Muttered a man as he sat in a leather black hair with his hands holding his head as he looked down onto the oak table his body was resting on. I agree. To think that the heroes of the world would simply just quit and not care anymore about the damages their villains cause and how much money is invested in repairing all the damages, don't they see reason? How could they let their own countries suffer? Questioned a female voice across the table, her features along with everyone else in the room blurred and distorted. Not long after, a small chuckle was heard. Honestly, do you really believe that these superheroes would actually give a damn about the country after we all voted for all heroes to register under the SRA? Please, I'm surprised that we didn't have a war between heroes and the governments of the world. Looking back at it, all we did was make heroes themselves targets for others. I've heard through some reliable sources that Peter Parker, Spider-Man's aunt, had been shot via a hitman hired by someone. Looking at it, all we did was make being a hero harder for those who registered in the first place, since anyone could get to them without their masks. It is harder to hate something with a face than it is with a mask or emblem. Replied a gruff older voice as multitudes of others either agreed or disagreed with the statement. But still, to basically say that the governments are all on their own, without any prior notice or warnings? That is too much. Sure, they are still saving people, but the amount of money we are all pooling to repair any damages is getting ridiculous. They do know what happens should the country's government falls, right? Asked another female, getting a small sigh from another person there. They do know, that's why they are able to do this. We shouldn't have fought with them in the first place. All it has done is because more problems for the world, and it also weakened our financial position and stability. I say we scrap the SRA and let the heroes go back to doing what they do best, protect the people, and reduce the amount of money we lose every time some asshole in a costume decides to blow something up. Spoke another in a bland tone, getting more than a few nods from the others. It wasn't long before someone decided to finalize the meeting either. Very well then, all those in favor of scrapping the SRA say, "I understood?" questioned one of the many people then, soon only to get a full set of eyes. "Are you sure this is all you have found out about him so far?" questioned a black-haired man in a serious tone as he sat within a comfortable chair, looking over a single report while stroking his goatee with his free hand. Standing across from him, a woman with short black hair, brown eyes, and a stern expression stared at him with a glare. "Director Stark, this is all we have. The man named Naruto, as eyewitnesses have said, has done nothing for over the past 2 weeks. In fact, the most we've recorded of him using his abilities is when he decided to embarrass the living daylights out of criminals," muttered Maria Hill as she threw another folder at the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Opening the folder, Tony Stark could say with 100% certainty he wasn't expecting what he saw. Did he ram his fingers in Shocker's ass before blasting the man off with a torrent of water? Geez, that would have given me nightmares. Feel kinda sorry for the guy. Muttered Tony with a small grin spreading along his face as he looked at what appeared to be numerous other mishaps revolving around the crimson-eyed teen who had appeared no longer than 4 weeks ago. Slamming her hand on the table, Maria Hill glared hatefully towards Tony. "As funny as it is to be reporting this, you do realize the situation we are in? Strange new person appears from nowhere, has all these abilities which I believe is just the tip of the iceberg, and we have no clue as to any weaknesses he has. S.H.I.E.L.D. has files for everyone, their powers, their weaknesses, their family. This guy effectively has nothing on him. The only other person who actually gets away from this list slightly are the unregistered heroes like Spider-Man, but even then we have something on them," growled out the woman as she stared directly into Tony's eyes, of which simply hardened themselves. "Of course I realize the position we're in. You realize that it was this same guy who effectively defeated nearly every hero in a matter of moments? He suppressed all of us with some sort of power that made us shake before cloning himself, not mad science cloning, but ability power cloning, which then knocked out all other heroes in moments. It was also this same guy who somehow managed to convince all of us that we should take a break from saving the world and let villains run amok for a few days. How did that happen? I'm guessing something along the lines of mind control, or some other telepathic ability. It's only after the law changed slightly to allow heroes to pick whether they wanted to or not join the registration that I was elected director of S.H.I.E.L.D. as the leader for pro-registration. Believe me, Hill, I know how bad this is. Grumbled the man in a less than humorous tone, his eyes moving back down towards the folder open on his desk. This kid is an Omega-level threat who could possibly kill us all right now if we don't think of some way to restrain him at a moment's notice. He might actually be worse than the Hulk who we sent off. Mumbled Tony towards the end, leaving his second-in-command missing out on what he ended the talk off with. Slouching in his seat, Tony let out a tired sigh before rubbing his forehead with his eyes shutting in concentration. Really wish I had a drink right about now. Anyway, what's our resident shinobi doing, as the people called him, doing? Asked Tony, his eyes replaying the event of his brief battle with the ninja. Flight, mind control possibly, energy projection, super strength, durability, intangibility and invisible pressure. These powers barely have anything to connect them with. God damn it! Yelled the man mentally before focusing in on Hill before blinking oddly. He's what? Questioned the man, getting a small sigh from the woman as she covered her face with a lone white glove. He was painting the helicarrier an hour ago and succeeded without anyone noticing. Right now we have over 200 staff washing off all the graffiti the man has done to the hull of the ship. Right now, he's, look behind you. Muttered the woman as she lowered her head. Turning his head around, the man could only blink for a brief moment before following suit and covering his face with his hand. Jarvis, automate a suit to clean the window, would you? Muttered Tony as he briefly glanced back towards the window, where he saw the sight of a full-scale picture of his Iron Man suit was being whipped by a building with the word government printed over its head with a set of arms and legs attached to the building. To top this off, there was a massive bubble with the words whipping boy printed on the window. Returning his gaze back into his hand, the man let out a sigh. Sir, I don't know how to tell you this, but the paint isn't just on the outside, spoke a metallic voice, causing the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. to turn his head back towards the window, where the sight of slight bits of wet paint began to fall down and smudge the image slightly. Turning back to Hill, he could only let out a small startled gasp. When did he? With Naruto. So, that was fun, I guess, although it was a bit too easy doing that, considering it was in the sky where everyone could have seen me paint the crap out of the flying ship. Muttered Naruto boredly as he stood on a skyscraper rooftop while staring upwards at the sight of a now hot rod pink-colored helicarrier as it soared up above the sky with the image of Iron Man being whipped by the government could be seen leading the charge. Scratching the back of his head, the teen rolled his shoulders slightly before letting out a tired yawn while propping himself onto his ass while dangling his legs over the edge of the skyscraper without a care in the world while he felt the breeze of the wind pass by his face. And it was like this how Naruto decided to spend the next 10 minutes of his life, as he simply watched the city from up above the skyline before he finally decided to unseal something he had attained not long ago after arriving. And what exactly did he attain? Well, Science for Dummies, Mechanics for Dummies, and How to Not Accidentally Kill Someone for Dummies, written by Wade Wilson. Gotta say, the last one sounds a bit overly specific. Chuckled Naruto good-naturedly as he summoned a set of clones to begin reading the books while he himself meditated and felt out the world and all his surroundings. You know, for some reason there actually seems to be more types of energy aligned with the natural energy I'm feeling out, much more powerful too at a concentrated form as well, thought Naruto with a small peaceful smile on his face as he found himself in his mindscape once again, with the sky being replaced by what appeared to be hundreds upon thousands of stars within space along with multiple different white spirals appearing randomly throughout it. Standing on the flat plane of his mindscape and watching slightly as his reserve nature energy pool began to fill as he absorbed the world's energy, the teen let out a small smile as he felt the powerful calming energy run smoothly through his veins before settling itself as if it was a natural part of his body. Crouching down slightly as he stared at the golden liquid in front of him, the teen let out a small smile as he began to direct the energy within the pool to enhance his own natural energies, his white chakra becoming more potent and his yin-yang reserves becoming wider and fuller as the nature energy pool began to diminish slightly at a slow rate before disappearing altogether as Naruto used his collected energy to increase his reserves. Pushing himself up onto his feet once more, the teen began to stare up into the galaxy-inspired sky for a few moments before grinning before silently moving his mouth. I know you're there, Naruto mouthed wordlessly with a grin taking over his features as he soon shattered his mindscape as he exited his mind. And as the mindscape disappeared, the sight of the galaxy sky shifting in different places revealed all those that had heard his claim before disappearing alongside the mindscape. Outside the mindscape, blinking himself awake, Naruto let out a rather lengthy sigh before pushing himself up onto his feet before giving a small smirk to his clones. "Well, I'll be seeing you guys, thanks for doing that," replied Naruto before clicking his fingers, causing the clones to disappear in a set of smoke before he gained the memories of his clones about the basics of each book he had read. Okay, mechanics sound fun. Could probably recreate that iron suit the guy had if I took a quick look in his head for the schematics, and as for science? It sounds like fun since you wouldn't know the outcome until it happens. Well, you could guess what happens at least and see why it did or didn't do what you thought it did. The third book was a ripoff. It only had a picture of a guy in a red and black suit riding a unicorn. Thought Naruto with a slight twitch as he glared at the lone "How to Not Accidentally Kill Someone for Dummies" book. Releasing a tired sigh, the teen glanced down towards his chest, where he then felt a slight surge of energy centered just above his heart, where the slight shine of a Fuinjutsu seal appeared before his eyes for a moment before disappearing once again, leaving the teen smiling slightly. "I guess the seal will restrict my strength so I don't have to worry about that. Along with my speed, but that's more of a hindrance with my perception speed and reflexes, but what concerns me is how different each human or being here on Earth is. It's like there isn't an average scale for them unlike back in the elemental nations, not only that, but their bodies are weaker to any amount of damage. So if I hit a spot that I knew wouldn't hurt someone in my reality, this world that one hit could possibly kill someone, I'm really restricted in what moves I can do and against who as well. Oh well. It's not like I can't take the seal off if the worst case scenario appears, and there's always that technique I can fall back on," thought the teen with a rather soft and still stare as he removed his eyes from his chest before quickly sealing up 2 of the 3 books he had, this being the mechanic and science books, before kicking the third one off the edge of the building, where the pages lit alight before burning to ashes. As he watched the wind take the ashes of the book away, the teen then looked back towards the city he was currently residing in for a few moments before tilting his head up slightly before blinking as his eyes came across something. Not a few moments after had the teen returned his attention back towards the ground below, where a large figure spoke. "Puny humans, I've come to smash, and you should know who's to blame," voiced out a large green muscle-bound being with traditional gladiator-like armor on as it stood in the center of Manhattan with its arms steadily by its side. Crossing his arms, Naruto tilted his head slightly. "Why is it something really complicated but stupid's about to arise from this?" muttered the teen softly before focusing on the mass projector of the green giant. "You call them heroes, I call them monsters. Listen to what they told me before they sent me away," spoke the being, his voice traveling throughout the entire city before a set of new voices were heard, accompanied by an image recording. Seeing what he saw, the teen known as Naruto slapped him face in irritation. "Is that Iron Man guy a secret bad guy and just wants to fuck this world over or something?" asked Naruto rhetorically as he looked at the sad face of Tony Stark looking at the screen with what was apparently Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, and Black Bolt. Of course, aside from the names, Naruto had no clue who the hell they were, aside from Iron Man and the stretchy guy Reed, or Mr. Fantastic as people say. "I have always thought of us as friends, Bruce. So I am truly genuinely sorry," spoke Reed Richards towards a camera, his expression being one like that of Stark, sad and remorseful. "But for your sake and ours, we're sending you away. It's the only way we can be sure," finished Mr. Fantastic as the clip's audio ended, leaving the images of the 4 people there for all to see. Hulk's eyes seemed to narrow slightly before he continued. "Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange, Black Bolt. They shot me into space, sent me to a planet named Sakaar, where I could be cut, where I could be killed. Where the Emperor made me a slave, then a gladiator, they sent me to die," spoke the Hulk, his tone and expressions being calm and collected as his body posture tensed for a brief moment. "But I survived with my warbound. Korg, Meek, Elo, Brood, Heroim, we made a world. I was the Green King, and Kaer the Old Strong was my queen, but your heroes sent a bomb. Killed a million people," spoke the projection once more before suddenly disappearing, leaving the image of the 4 members on the screen as the Hulk himself appeared from the top of the ship with the body of a black costumed individual, Black Bolt, beating to the point of unconsciousness. "Now this city will fall. You have 24 hours to evacuate. When I return, I want to see Mr. Fantastic, Iron Man and Doctor Strange. And if they're not here, I'll do this to your whole stinking planet," shouted the Hulk, dangling the mutilated body of Black Bolt for a few seconds before lowering himself down and disappearing with the ship. Down below, Naruto could only grit his teeth for a moment before looking down towards the ground once again, where the sight of people beginning to panic took its place. Crossing his fingers, the teen let out a small narrowed stare. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. 2 hours later, that was easy enough, now I got to find out exactly what's happening in this world," Damn it, I should have just yanked the information straight from Stark's head while I painted the stupid ship in the sky. Muttered Naruto with a narrowed glare as he bounded from building to building with a simple hop and jump routine, ignoring the sounds of other heroes getting the civilians he had rescued, which were over more than 80% in the last hour due to his ability to sense people and his use of shadow clones, before coming towards the center of Manhattan where the Hulk had projected himself. Landing on the now deathly silent street with little more than a small thud, the teen looked around before staring towards the sight of what appeared to be a group of people. One of which, he remembered slamming into the ground not only a few weeks ago. Raising his hand up to his head for a two-finger salute, the teen gave the small chunk of people in front of him a small grin. "Hey Cap. How's it going? Back feeling a bit better after the whole slamming you into the ground thing?" Questioned Naruto with a widening grin as he watched the blue-colored hero walk up to him with a small group of people consisting of the anti-registration force. "Nice to meet you again, soldier. I see that you've handled the situation revolving around the civilians in the area," remarked the man, briefly glancing around where the literal sounds of crickets were heard for a few moments before returning his gaze towards Naruto's crimson-colored eyes. "I know you haven't been here for long, soldier, but I feel as if we should plan out our strategy to take on the Hulk. Many heroes have faced him, but only a handful have defeated him, with many not being able to say they've done it twice either. Not only that, but while your techniques and abilities worked against a distracted group of heroes, it won't affect the Hulk. Believe me on that, so son, what will you do? Will you help us defeat the Hulk?" asked the patriotic man, his hand moving towards Naruto for a firm shake to signal agreement between the two. However, as Naruto stared at the hand, the teen shook his head before looking up towards the sky. "I think I might have to take you up on your offer, not only because you're right and I don't know what I'm dealing with, but I can sense others with him, with Hulk, and due to a recent little stunt of mine, my abilities will be unusable for probably the next few days, so a plan would definitely work," replied the teen as he narrowed his eyes while mentally slapping himself for stupidly making a small lie about his abilities so that everyone would keep guessing whether he could or couldn't use them. Hearing this, the man gave a small smile as he watched Naruto's firm hand clasp itself around Captain America's for a few moments before the living legend turned slightly towards his companions. "I've assembled a small squad to fight against the Hulk while sending the rest of to help the civilians and set up a perimeter to help keep people out. Currently, since the Accords being a voluntary thing, both we and S.H.I.E.L.D. have stopped most, if not all forms of communication between each other while having a general rule that should the other do something bad, the other side will step in, but for this situation, we have decided to work together, and for what it's worth, thank you for what you did, even if I know you forced us into simply doing nothing but stopping petty crime. It was because you did this that the president decided to make the SRA Act voluntary and not a mandatory act. Something that has allowed heroes all across America to choose what they want, and not forced to bend to their wills," replied Captain America as he moved his arm along the group. "Here we have Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Samson, Cage, Wonder Man and Ms. Marvel. I'm sure you've heard of them?" asked the man, getting a small nod from Naruto as he waved his hand towards the now black and white spandex spider hero. "Sup, Spider? How's the suit going for ya? Got black boxers underneath to hide any holes?" asked Naruto, dodging a small ball of webbing from Spider-Man as the man shook his fist angrily at the teen. "That wasn't my fault," shouted the man, earning a few snickers from around him and an open laugh from a certain blonde-haired bombshell of a woman as she nudged the spider-themed hero in the ribs. "Well do ya, Spidey? You got your black boxers right?" asked the woman in a joke-y tone, getting a small glare from the man as he turned his head and pouted slightly. Grinning slightly at the embarrassed hero, Naruto turned towards the captain once more before crossing his arms. "Okay, first off, I think we need to establish some trust. As such, why not try something basic?" questioned the teen, getting a small nod from the man. "I suppose that is wise. Okay, so what do you have in mind?" asked the captain, getting a small smile from Naruto as he hopped back slightly before rolling his shoulder. "A fight. This way we can get to know each other's fighting abilities and where it would be suitable to place each member in the coming fight. Don't worry, I'll be able to heal everyone at the end, so don't hold too much back, okay?" replied Naruto, getting a nod from Steve as he turned his body towards his group. "Is there anyone who doesn't want to do this? This is simply a way to get to know each other's fighting capabilities. For us, we're trying out Naruto's. For Naruto, he's trying out our capabilities. It will be a one-on-one fight, and I do believe that his healing techniques are quite efficient. But should someone call time out, both must stop immediately. Is that doable, Naruto?" asked Steve, turning his head towards Naruto for a brief moment where he got a small nod from the teen as he then moved into stretching his body. Returning back towards the group of heroes, Steve watched Samson and Wonder Man wave themselves off. "I think we're fine just watching if that's okay, Cap," replied the two near simultaneously, getting a nod from the captain as he returned his attention towards the rest of the group. "Okay. Who wants to go first then?" asked Steve, waiting for a few moments before She-Hulk raised her hand up slightly, a grin spreading along her face as she walked past the patriotic man. "I'll give him a go. After all, I don't want to miss out on a chance to fight the kid after he gets to beat up from fighting everyone else," replied Jennifer as she smashed her fist into an open palm, sending a small burst of wind around her that threw her hair wildly for a second before falling back down. Grinning a tad bit, the teen rolled his neck before crouching himself down slightly before holding his hands in front of him. "So, what's your power?" asked Naruto with a grin as he felt his blood pumping through his body. His answer? A charging woman with her fist cocked back. Moving his arms up slightly to block the hit, the teen could only watch as the green-skinned woman let out a large smile for a moment, before sending him flying back from the hit, his arms rattling from the impact of the woman's fist. Moving into a roll from the impact, the teen pushed himself up off the ground before quickly moving into a duck, dodging a wild swing from the woman before quickly ramming his shoulder into the woman's gut, winding her for a second before he felt the back of his shirt grabbed by two hands. "Well, shit," the teen thought for a moment before feeling his body lifted off the ground slightly before being flung down at a fast speed, where a knee to his gut was awaiting him. Crack. The sound of his ribs breaking was heard, not to mention the teen also felt a small bit of blood gargle up through his throat before sitting itself within his mouth. Oh no, are you okay? I thought you were more durable duh." Before She-Hulk could apologize for the amount of strength she put into her knee, the green woman suddenly found herself face first into the ground, with a now surprisingly fine Naruto appearing midair with his hand forcing the woman's head down into the earth before quickly hopping away from her. Landing in a small crouch, the teen let out a small laugh. "Okay, I underestimated your strength. And from what I guess, yours is a lot less from the other guy's strength, but I think you have more technique over his brawn, so sorry for holding back as much as I did. This time I'll fight on par with your strength," spoke Naruto as he watched the woman dig her head out from the ground below before glaring at him. "Oh really? Well, let's see who wins then," shouted the woman as she charged towards Naruto, who followed suit and pushed himself off the ground into a run, where his fist clashed with She-Hulk's with the same strength from both sides. "I won't lose to you," screamed the woman as she threw more effort into her fist, which was now slightly pushing the crimson-eyed teen's hand backwards for a few moments before he suddenly matched her strength again. Grinning, the teen with his open hand held his arm slightly behind him before moving his chakra into a spiral, which then formed a large blue palm-sized spinning orb. Grinning, the teen flicked his fist, sending both himself and She-Hulk unbalanced for a few moments before digging his Rasengan into the woman's stomach while he himself got a headbutt from the woman which then sent him flying back, as did the Rasengan when it suddenly exploded against She-Hulk. Smirking slightly as he flew backwards, the teen quickly aimed his wrist towards the flying She-Hulk before sending a small burst of chakra into his wrist, causing a single wire to shoot out from his wrist before spiraling around and netting itself around She-Hulk's ankle before tightening itself. Twisting himself in the air before coming into a crouch, the teen began to feed his chakra into the wire before his face lit up with a large grin, before She-Hulk suddenly screamed in pure pain as lightning danced around the wire and around the woman's body as Naruto continued to pump more and more chakra into the wire, sending the woman into a spasming fit as Naruto continued the assault. A few seconds later, the teen finally let up his chakra, allowing the woman to pant on the ground in an exhausted heap of flesh and bone while holding her head from the pain she had just felt. Scratching the back of his head as he moved over towards the woman, Naruto let out a small shameful chuckle before crouching down beside her form and letting his chakra shift slightly into a green color before healing the woman on the ground at an accelerated rate, allowing her mind to unclutter itself from its lightning-induced pain. "I want a rematch, got it?" muttered the woman as she felt herself heal from her injuries, Naruto simply giving a silent nod as he made sure to heal all the damage his lightning chakra had caused to the woman's body, while also using a subtle amount of yin-yang energy to repair the rather little clothing on the woman's body. He didn't want to say, but a large portion of her clothing was ripped from his Rasengan's explosion, and he so didn't want to have to deal with any situation that could have happened should he have left the green woman in her state of undress. Shaking his head from the thought, the teen let out a small sigh as he finally finished healing up the tall green woman before turning back towards Captain America, who was staring at him intently for a few moments before nodding. "Good job, soldier. What you felt just then was a tiny fraction of the strength the Hulk can produce. It's good to know that your healing abilities are quite quick all things considered, and the fact that you implemented a weapon that no one would suspect is genius in its own right, although, I am curious about how you have that sort of weapon in the first place. I mean, it does have similarities to Spidey's old web shooters after all." remarked the captain as his eyes watched the remainder of the wire Naruto had launched return back into his wrist for a moment before returning his focus on Naruto himself, who simply waved his hand. Honestly, the healing speed I just did was nothing near how fast I could do it, but if I only heal the body and not make it accustomed to its sudden healing, it would leave the user in a state of discomfort and would make their body feel alien to themselves for a while. As for the Hulk having more strength than her, I guess I could simply outpace him in speed. My strength is nowhere near what I believe to be Hulk's strength, without me connecting my yang energy, my chakra, and nature energy together to give me a yang chakra mode, but even then the pure strength might not be enough, and as for my wire launchers, I made them myself when I was 13. Thought I could use them to my advantage back in my world, and they really were effective once I gained more control over my abilities. Replied Naruto, as he pulled one of his long-sleeve shirts sleeve up, showing a small thin metal contraption around his wrist for a few moments before the teen covered them up once again while placing his hand on his hips. "So Cap, who's next?" asked the teen as he looked at the living legend, who scratched the back of his neck for a moment before turning towards his group once more, where he was met with the sight of unwilling members to fight against the teen. Letting out a small sigh, he returned his attention towards Naruto. "I guess it will be me. Get ready, soldier, I'm coming at you at 100%. Replied Cap as he lifted his shield in front of his body as he looked at Naruto with a serious expression, causing the teen to nod as he crouched down slightly. Bring it, Cap. The end. Thanks for watching. Also remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.